Most people look at a Social Security statement the way a defendant looks at a verdict. They see a number, they feel disappointed, and then they assume the case is closed. I do not think that way. If you are in your late 50s or your 60s and you do not like the number on your statement, there's a very good chance you still have room to move it. Not with wishful thinking, not with internet folklore. Not with one of those slogans people repeat because they heard it from a neighbor who sounds confident at dinner. I am talking about real levers, measurable levers. Levers that can permanently change how much guaranteed income lands in your household every single month for the rest of your life. And that matters more than most people understand. I have spent a lifetime thinking about the difference between assets that look impressive and assets that actually make you feel secure. Social Security is one of the few income streams in retirement that is guaranteed for life and adjusted for inflation. That is not a trivial thing. In many retirements, it is the most durable income stream a household has. So when someone says to me, Warren, I opened my statement and I am not happy with the number, is there anything I can still do? My answer is yes. There are several things you can do. But before I give you the 5 moves that can increase your check, I want to do something most people skip. I want to show you why those 5 moves work in the first place. Because once you understand the machine, the strategy stops feeling like guesswork. And once you understand the machine, you will know more about your own benefit than a surprising number of people who talk about retirement for a living. So slow down with me for a few minutes. If you already know exactly how Social Security is built, you may be tempted to skip ahead mentally. I would not. The mechanics are where the money is hiding. The government does not pull your benefit out of thin air. It uses a multi-step formula. And every one of the 5 moves I am about to give you is simply a way of improving one of those steps. The first step is simple. The Social Security Administration keeps a record of what you earn in each year that you worked and paid Social Security taxes. That sounds straightforward, but there's a catch people miss. Not every dollar you earn counts. There's a taxable wage cap. In the source example we are working from, that cap is listed at $184,500 for 2026 and $176,000 for 2025. If you make more than the cap, the dollars above that line do not count toward your Social Security formula. They also are not subject to the Social Security portion of FICA. So if you earn $250,000 in a year, the system is not treating all $250,000 equally. It stops counting at the cap that matters because some people imagine every extra dollar of income keeps boosting their future benefit forever. It does not. Once you are above the cap, you have hit the ceiling for that year as contribution to the formula. The second step is where things become more interesting. The government does not just look at the raw dollars you earned 20 or 30 years ago. It indexes older earnings for wage inflation. In plain English, it tries to put your past earnings onto a more comparable scale. $30,000 earned decades ago is not treated like $30,000 earned today because the economy, wages, and purchasing power are not the same. That adjustment is one of the reasons people get confused when they try to guess their own benefit by memory. They remember what they made. The formula remembers what those earnings mean after adjustment. There is another nuance here, and it matters. The indexing generally applies only up to age 60. Earnings after age 60 are counted in actual dollars, not inflation, adjusted through that same indexing process. That does not mean late career earnings are useless. Far from it. If your earnings in your 60s are high, they can still replace weaker years in the record. But it does mean late earnings behave differently inside the formula than many people assume. Now we come to the third step, and this is where a lot of households either help themselves or hurt themselves. The system does not use every year you worked. It takes your 35 highest earning years, not your most recent 35 years, not 35 consecutive years, your highest 35 years. That is wonderful news. If you had some very weak years early in life and later replaced them with stronger years, those old low numbers can get pushed out. It is not such wonderful news if you worked fewer than 35 years. In that case, the system does not say, well, you did your best, we will just average the years you have. Number it fills the missing years with zeros, and zeros are ruthless. They sit in the average like dead weight. If you worked 30 years, you are not being compared over 30 years. You are being averaged over 35, with 5 empty years, dragging the number down. That is one of the clearest examples of why retirement math punishes people who do not understand the rules. The damage is not dramatic on one line of paper, but over a lifetime of monthly checks, it can amount to a great deal of money. Then comes step 4. After your 35 highest indexed years are selected, the government adds them up and divides by 420. That is 35 years times 12 months. The result is called your average indexed monthly earnings, often shortened to AIME. Think of AIME as the raw monthly foundation under your future benefit. It is not the final check, but it is the number the next formula sits on top of. If your best 35 years add up to $2.1 million after indexing, divide by 420 and you get $5,000. Again, that is not your benefit. It is the earnings base that feeds the benefit formula. And that brings us to the part most people have never heard explained clearly. The system uses a progressive replacement formula. It does not replace each dollar of AIM equally. It breaks that monthly number into layers, often called bend points in ordinary retirement planning conversation, and it replaces different layers at different rates in the source material. The illustration uses 2025 bend points of $1,226 and $7,391. The first slice of your AIM up to the first bend point gets replaced at 90%. The next slice between the first and second bend point gets replaced at 32%. Anything above the second bend point gets replaced at 15%. That means the system is intentionally more generous on the first dollars of average earnings and much less generous on the later dollars. It was designed that way to create a stronger safety net for lower earners. So if your AIM is $5,000, the first $1,226 is multiplied by 90%. The next portion up to $5,000 is multiplied by 32%. And there is nothing above the second bend point in that example. Add it together and you might get a primary insurance amount around $2,300 per month at full retirement age. That is why higher earners often misunderstand what Social Security can and cannot do. It is important income, it is durable income, it is inflation-linked income, but it is not designed to replace a luxury lifestyle on its own. And finally, the last step. After the formula produces your primary insurance amount, the government adjusts that benefit based on when you claim. This is where impatience gets expensive. Claim before full retirement age and your benefit is reduced for life. For many people, claiming at 62 means a roughly 30% permanent haircut compared with claiming at full retirement age. Delay past full retirement age and the benefit grows. In the source material, the rule of thumb used is roughly 8% per year up to age 70. After 70, there is no prize for waiting longer. The meter stops running. Then, once you are on benefits, cost of living adjustments continue to increase that payment over time. So let us step back and simplify the whole machine. Your benefit is driven by how much you earned, how many years you worked, how strong your highest 35 years are, and when you claim. That is it. And once you understand that, the 5 ways to increase your Social Security check stop sounding like tips and start sounding like mathematics. The first move is the most powerful one, and it is the one people resist because it demands patience. Delay claiming if your situation allows it. I know this is not a fashionable thing to say to people who want certainty right now. I know there are people who treat claiming early like a philosophical statement about beating the system. I have heard every argument, most of them are emotional. This one is arithmetic. If your full retirement age benefit is $2,500 a month and you claim early at 62, you might reduce it to around $1,750. If instead you delay to 70, that same base benefit might rise to around $3,100 before future cost of living increases compound on top of it. That is not a rounding error. That is roughly $1,400 a month of difference between impatience and patience. That is more than $16,000 a year. That is the kind of difference that changes how much pressure your portfolio carries, how much spending freedom you have, and how secure the surviving spouse may be later. Now, let me be clear about something, because serious planning requires honesty, not slogans. Delaying is not automatically right for everyone. If your health is poor, if you need the income immediately, if your household has other constraints, then an earlier claim can be rational. Good planning is not religion, it is fit. But if you are in decent health and you have other assets or income sources that can bridge those years, delaying is one of the strongest levers available because it buys more guaranteed inflation, adjusted income for the rest of your life. That matters more the older you get. The second move is less glamorous but often very effective. Make sure you get to 35 earning years if you are short. I know that sounds almost too obvious to be useful, but the reason it matters is not motivational. It is mechanical. If you have fewer than 35 years on your record, zeros are sitting in the formula. Replacing a zero with even a modest earning year can lift the average. A lot of people underestimate how much damage those empty years do because they do not show up in daily life as a bill. They show up quietly in a smaller check for the rest of your retirement. Suppose you worked 30 years and had a respectable career, but then took time away, started a business that paid little, cared for family, or had years with no reported wages. The system is not sentimental. Those missing years still count as zero. Put one more earning year into that record and you do not merely add income, you remove a zero. That is a double benefit. And if you add several years, the improvement can be meaningful. Now here is where judgment comes in. Not everyone with low or missing years should automatically work longer just to improve their own worker benefit. If a spouse with a much larger record creates a strong spousal benefit for you, then the gain from adding more years to your own record may be smaller than you think. If your spouse's primary insurance amount is high enough, the spousal structure may matter more than squeezing a little extra from your own record. So this is not a moral lecture about working forever. It is simply a reminder that if you are short of 35 years, you should know exactly what those missing years are costing you before you decide you are done. The third move is to increase earnings in the years that still count. People hear that and roll their eyes. I understand it sounds like advice from a man who has never met a labor market, but stay with me, because the point is more precise than just earn more. If your current earnings are stronger than some of your weaker years on record, then each additional high-earning year can push a lower year out of the top 35. That improves the average. If you are not already over the taxable wage cap, the improvement can be real. Imagine one of your earlier indexed years is effectively contributing something like $30,000 to the formula, and now you are earning $90,000 or $100,000. A new high-earning year can replace that weaker year. One year may not create a dramatic jump by itself, but several years can absolutely lift the monthly benefit in a visible way. This is especially relevant for people in their 50s and 60s who are earning the best money of their lives right now. Late career years are often more powerful than people realize. Yes, those earnings after 60 are not indexed the same way earlier earnings were. But if the raw dollars are high enough, they can still beat weaker past years and improve the record. So the right question is not simply, should I work longer? The right question is this: if I work longer, am I replacing weak years with strong years, or am I merely adding stress without changing much? That is a very different conversation. The fourth move is where married couples either act like a team or leave money on the table. Coordinate spousal benefits intelligently. If you are married, this is not an individual decision. It is a household decision. And households that plan as two isolated people often do something foolish without realizing it. The lower earning spouse may be entitled to a spousal benefit of up to 50% of the higher earning spouse's primary insurance amount. But there are timing rules, reduction rules, and trade-offs. The full percentage does not magically appear under every claiming pattern. If the lower earning spouse claims early, that benefit can be reduced. If they wait until their own full retirement age, the spousal amount is stronger. So already the timing of one spouse affects the value received by the other. But the bigger prize often sits one layer deeper, the survivor benefit. This is where mature planning beats cocktail party opinion. When one spouse dies, the surviving spouse generally keeps the higher of the two benefits, not both. That means the claiming decision of the higher earner can shape the survivor's financial security for the rest of that survivor's life. If the higher earner delays to age 70 and locks in, say, a $3,700 monthly benefit, while the lower earner is receiving a smaller benefit, then after the higher earner dies, the survivor can step up to that larger payment. That is not a small detail. That can be the difference between a widow or widower staying financially stable and suddenly having to rearrange the entire retirement lifestyle. This is why the higher earner delaying can be so powerful in married planning. It is not just about maximizing one person's check. It is often about buying insurance for the second half of the household's retirement. In many cases, a sensible structure is for the lower earner to claim earlier or use a smaller benefit, while the higher earner delays. That brings some income into the home, eases the psychological burden of spending from savings, and still protects the larger long-term survivor benefit. But again, seriousness matters here. There is no universal answer. Age gaps matter, health matters, tax planning matters, Roth conversion plans matter, existing assets matter. What does not change is the principle. If you are married, do not make a Social Security decision as though you live alone. Look at both records, look at both life expectancies, look at both benefits. Then decide as a household. The fifth move is the least glamorous and one of the most neglected. Check your earnings record for mistakes. Governments make errors. Systems misclassify wages. Records go missing. And if an error sits inside your earnings history, it can quietly reduce your benefit for the rest of your life. That is the kind of mistake people notice only after they have spent decades trusting the paperwork. The source material makes this point clearly. There have been billions of dollars in wages that were reported but not properly matched to the right worker record. If that happens to you and one of your stronger years is missing or understated, the damage is not theoretical. It can cost you thousands of dollars over time. So do the obvious thing that surprisingly few people do. Create your account, pull your statement, review your earnings history at minimum. But check the years that should stand dollars. If something looks dramatically off, compare it with old tax returns, W-2s, or whatever records you still have. Yes, the farther back you go, the more annoying correction becomes. Yes, documentation matters. Yes, it is tedious. But there are few chores in personal finance with a higher payoff per HR than discovering a permanent error in a lifetime government benefit before it is too late to fix. Now, let me tie all 5 moves together, because people get themselves into trouble when they treat this as a checklist instead of a strategy. Your Social Security decision does not exist in a vacuum. It lives inside your tax situation, It lives inside your portfolio withdrawals. It lives inside your spouse. S-claiming pattern. It lives inside your health. It lives inside your bridge income before benefits begin. It lives inside your retirement spending plan. This is why one-size-fits-all advice is usually the financial equivalent of junk food. It tastes decisive, but it is not nourishing. There are households where delaying both benefits makes sense. There are households where one spouse should claim early and the other should delay. There are households in poor health where claiming earlier is entirely rational. There are households doing Roth conversions who may want lower Social Security income for a period so they can manage tax brackets more efficiently. There are people with short work histories who can get an outsized boost simply by replacing a couple of zeros. There are people already well above 35 years where more work will barely move the needle unless the new years are much stronger than the years being pushed out. So do not ask for ideology, ask for math, and do not confuse activity with wisdom. Plenty of people work longer when the after-tax, after-stress gain is minimal. Plenty of people claim early because they hate uncertainty, not because the lifetime plan demands it. If you want to do this like an investor, think in terms of trade-offs. What are you giving up by claiming early? What are you risking by delaying? What weak years are still sitting in your record? Are you leaving zeros untouched that could be replaced? Are your current earnings high enough to push out a poor year? Is your spouse survivor protection being strengthened or weakened by your choice? Is the number on your statement wrong because no one has checked it in years? Those are not casual questions. Those are money questions. And I have learned over a lifetime that big money questions usually reward calm thinking more than quick action. Here is another way to think about it. A lot of people obsess over getting a slightly better return out of an investment account while ignoring a far more durable source of return sitting right in front of them. A larger Social Security check is not flashy. It will not make for exciting cocktail conversation, but it is guaranteed income. It is inflation-adjusted income. And in the right household, it takes pressure off every other asset you own. A stronger guaranteed floor can let you invest the rest of your money with more confidence. It can reduce sequence of returns risk in the early years of retirement. It can ease fear when markets are down. It can support the surviving spouse later. It can make every dollar in the portfolio work from a position of greater stability. That is not a small thing. That is capital allocation inside a retirement household. And capital allocation is never about the headline. It is about what gives you the strongest long-term position. So if you ask me what to do with a disappointing Social Security statement, I would say this: do not react emotionally. Do not assume the current number is final. Do not let internet certainty bully you into a permanent decision. Instead, do the work in order. First, understand exactly how the formula is built. Second, decide whether delaying fits your health, cash flow, and bridge resources. Third, find out whether you are short of 35 years or still carrying weak years that can be replaced. Fourth, if you are still working, evaluate whether higher current earnings can materially improve your record. Fifth, if you are married, stop thinking like a solo claimant and start thinking like a household chief investment officer. Sixth, verify your earnings history, because there is no glory in trusting a mistaken record. And then make the decision with a cool head. I want to leave you with one final test, because good retirement decisions usually come down to one honest question. Are you making this choice to maximize lifetime security, or are you making it to relieve short-term anxiety? Those two motives can produce very different claiming decisions. One is strategy. The other is discomfort management. If you know you need the money now, be honest, and claim accordingly. If you know you are healthy, have resources to bridge the gap, and are sacrificing a much larger inflation-protected benefit out of impatience, be honest about that too. If you are married, ask an even tougher version of the same question. Are we optimizing for the household across 2 lifetimes, or are we just reacting to this year's feelings? That is the threshold. That is the test. Because Social Security is not just a government check. It is one of the few places in retirement where patience, coordination, and accuracy can permanently improve your position without requiring genius, luck, or market heroics. Most people do not need a miracle here. They need clarity. And clarity, when it comes to lifelong income, is worth a great deal of money.